In the dead of night, the faithful servant swam silently through the palace halls. In her arms, she carried the sleeping prince, wrapped in seaweed and laid inside a shining seashell. No one saw her leave, and by morning, the palace was in chaos. What happens when jealousy enters a royal palace beneath the sea? Stay with us. Welcome to our channel, where we bring you powerful African folktales filled with wisdom and wonder. If you're new here, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss a story. And if you enjoy today's tale, kindly drop a comment below. We love hearing your thoughts. In a wealthy mermaid kingdom, King Ora married a beautiful queen, Queen Afea. She was kind-hearted, graceful, and wore a smile on her face every blessed day. The palace was filled with peace, music, and laughter. The people loved their king, and they adored their queen even more, for she was gentle and always listened to their cries. But suddenly, everything changed. The king's heart grew restless. He longed for an heir, a son who would one day inherit the throne and carry the name of his fathers. Queen Afea had given him 3 lovely daughters, Adora, the eldest, wise and quiet, Titi, playful and curious, and Damiela, the youngest, bright as the morning sun. The king cared for them, yes, but in his heart, it was not enough, for what he desired most was a son. And so, the warmth of the palace began to fade. The queen still smiled, but her smile grew heavy. The king's once gentle voice turned sharp with impatience. The courtiers whispered in dark corners. Some said the queen was cursed. One day, the king's cabinet gathered to discuss the matter. An elder cleared his throat and spoke boldly, "My king, a king without a son is like a tree without roots. Take another wife, and perhaps the gods will bless you with a prince." A few nodded in agreement. Others remained silent. Queen Afea sat quietly, her once bright face dimmed. She said nothing, though her heart ached deeply. A few weeks after the meeting, the king made his decision. He would take a second wife. Soon after, news spread through the palace. The king had chosen a second wife. Her name was Olufemi, a woman of rare beauty and fierce ambition. She walked into the palace with pride in her eyes and a heart set on power. From the day Olufemi entered, the palace was never the same. She pretended to honor Queen Afea, but her smile was sharp, her words carried poison. "Do not worry, elder queen," Olufemi whispered one day, her voice sweet as honey but sharp as a blade. "You will keep your daughters, but I will give the king what he truly wants." And so the battle began, not with swords and spears, but with envy, whispers, and quiet tears. Olufemi bore a son within just a few months of entering the palace. Murmurs spread quickly through the kingdom. Some said she was truly blessed, while others whispered darker thoughts, wondering how such fortune had come so swiftly. The child was named Ola, meaning wealth. From that day, the real war began. Ola was pampered, carried about like a treasure, and showered with love that far outweighed the affection shown to Queen Afea's daughters. This difference made Queen Olufemi bolder. She mocked Afea openly, her laughter sharp and cruel. "Do you see?" she would boast with pride. "The king's joy rests in my arms. I gave him a son. Watch me give the prince another boy, and then another. What have you given him but daughters who cannot carry his name?" The mocking grew heavier with each passing day, pressing against Queen Afea's heart. Her smile faded into silence. Her once bright spirit dimmed under the weight of shame. She endured quietly, until one day, she could no longer take it. That night, Queen Afea sat alone in her chamber, her eyes heavy with unshed tears. The sound of Olufemi's laughter echoed through the halls, each word like a spear in her heart. The more she thought of her daughters, Adora, Titi, and little Damiela, the more her pain turned into resolve. She could no longer watch her girls grow in shame while another woman mocked her, so she called one of her most faithful servants, a woman who had served her since the days before she became queen. "If I continue in silence, Olufemi will crush me completely," Afea whispered. "You must help me. We will take the child. Ola will no longer be her weapon against me." The servant, though trembling, bowed her head. "My queen, I am yours till the end. Tell me what to do." And so, in the silence of that night, a dangerous plan was born. That night, when the moonlight pierced through the waves and bathed the palace walls in silver glow, the faithful servant swam silently through the long coral halls. Her tail flicked gently, careful not to stir the currents that might wake the guards. In Queen Olufemi's chamber, baby Ola drifted in sleep within a cradle carved from pearl and seashells, the softest seaweed wrapped around him like a blanket. Tiny bubbles escaped his lips as he dreamed, floating toward the ceiling like stars. The servant paused at the entrance, her heart thundering inside her chest. She whispered a quick prayer to the ocean spirits, begging them for courage. With trembling fins, she glided inside. Olufemi's maid had fallen asleep, her head resting against a wall of coral, strands of her hair floating gently in the water. The servant swam closer, her eyes locked on the child. Slowly, she slipped her arms under Ola and lifted him. The boy stirred, letting out a small cry, but soon quieted again. For a heartbeat, the servant felt relief. The plan was working. She turned, clutching the prince to her chest as she began to glide toward the doorway. The servant was not caught. Her plan worked like the whisper of a shadow in the deep. With the baby held tightly against her chest, she swam out of the palace, her tail flashing with urgency as she glided through the kingdom's dark waters. Faster and faster she swam, her heart racing, until at last she reached the far edge of the river where the kingdom's light could no longer be seen. There, she rose above the surface, breaking into the cool night air. Carefully, she placed the baby upon a smooth stone by the riverbank. Beside him, she laid a great seashell, open and shining like a cradle of the sea. The child, Ola, rested within it, still sleeping peacefully, his tiny breath soft as the night breeze. The servant's eyes lingered on him for one last moment. Her heart ached, but her duty was done. With a final glance, she turned and slipped back into the water, vanishing beneath the waves. By morning, the palace was in chaos. Servants rushed through the coral halls, guards searched every corner of the kingdom, and the wails of Queen Olufemi echoed like thunder through the waters. The prince was gone. The king's voice roared with anger, shaking the walls of the palace as orders flew like arrows. Far away, on the riverbank, a poor woman came with her clay pot to fetch water. Her wrapper was faded, her steps slow with weariness, but her spirit was strong. She bent down, filled her pot, and balanced it carefully on her head. Just as she turned to leave, a soft cry reached her ears. She froze. At first, she thought it was only the call of a bird, but then the cry came again, louder, desperate, human. The woman's heart quickened. She turned her head and followed the sound, her feet carrying her toward the river's edge. There, on a smooth stone, she saw a sight that made her drop her pot of water with a crash. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Before her lay a baby, wrapped in strands of fine seaweed, resting inside a shining seashell. His tiny face glowed against the morning light, and his cry pierced the still air like a plea from the gods. The woman's lips trembled. "A child, from the river?" she whispered. The poor woman's hands shook as she bent down and lifted the child from the seashell. The baby quieted the moment he touched her arms, gazing up at her with innocent eyes as if he had been waiting for her all along. Her heart melted. She had no riches, no husband, no children of her own. Life had always been heavy on her shoulders, yet here in her arms was a gift she could not explain. "Surely the gods have answered my cries," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "This child is mine now. I will care for him as if he came from my own womb." She wrapped the baby in her scarf and held him close to her chest. With one last look at the seashell, now empty, she turned and walked away from the river. Her pot of water lay shattered on the ground, but she did not care. From that day, her life would never be the same. The poor woman carried the baby gently to her small hut at the edge of the village. Her home was made of mud walls and a thatched roof, nothing like the shining halls of the mermaid palace. Yet, when she laid the child on her little mat, the room seemed brighter, as though the gods themselves had lit a lamp inside. She named him Ola, keeping the name she whispered when she found him, for to her he was indeed wealth, not of gold or silver, but of joy and love. She nursed him with care, feeding him from what little she had, and wrapped him in old clothes, soft and clean. The villagers were curious. Some said the woman was blessed by the river spirits. Others shook their heads, muttering that no good could come from a child found by the water. But the woman paid them no mind. She loved Ola as her own, and with each passing day, the boy grew stronger, his eyes bright like the morning sun. Meanwhile, back in the palace, sorrow and confusion filled the waters. Queen Olufemi wailed without rest, her beauty darkened by grief and anger. The king grew restless, blaming every servant, every guard, every shadow. The daughters of Queen Afea watched in silence, knowing more than they dared to speak. Still, no trace of the prince was ever found. Years passed, and Ola grew like a palm tree planted by the river. Though he was raised in poverty, his spirit was rich, and his laughter filled the woman's small hut with joy. He ran barefoot along the sandy banks, his voice carrying over the water like a song. The poor woman, though she struggled to feed herself, never let the boy go hungry. She worked twice as hard, fetching water for others, gathering firewood, and selling little bundles of fish to buy him food. Her neighbors shook their heads, wondering how she could give so much to a child that was not her blood. But when Ola smiled, she knew it was worth every sacrifice. As he grew, strange things began to happen around him. The river seemed to know his name. Whenever Ola played by the water's edge, fish would leap and circle around him, and the waves rose gently as if greeting their lost prince. At night, when the moon shone bright, the seashell in which he had been found glimmered softly beside him, as though reminding him of his true home. The woman noticed these things but kept them close to her heart. "This boy is not ordinary," she whispered to herself. "He was sent to me for a reason." Back in the palace, the king's heart grew colder with each year that passed without a son. He ruled with a heavy hand, his joy stolen by the loss. Queen Olufemi's bitterness only deepened, and her mockery of Queen Ifeanyi ceased. But none of them knew that the child they searched for still lived, hidden in plain sight, in the arms of a poor woman who loved him more than life itself. By the time Ola reached 12 seasons, he was tall and strong, with eyes that shone like the morning star. He helped the poor woman with her chores, carrying firewood, fetching water, and even mending nets for fishermen. Everyone in the village admired his strength, though some still whispered that there was something different about him. One evening, after a long day, Ola sat by the river with the woman who had raised him. The moonlight danced on the water, and the sound of frogs filled the night air. He turned to her with a serious look. "Mother," he said softly, "why do the villagers whisper about me? Why do the fish follow me whenever I step into the river? Why does the seashell beside my bed glow at night?" The woman's heart tightened. She had prayed this day would never come, yet she knew it could not be avoided. She laid her hand gently on his shoulder. "My son," she began, her voice trembling, "you are not like other children. The river gave you to me. I found you lying in a shining shell, crying on the stone. From that day, I knew you were a child of destiny." Ola's eyes widened. His heart beat faster. "Then, I am not your real son?" Tears gathered in the woman's eyes. "No, my child. You came from a world greater than mine. But hear me well, I may not have given birth to you, yet in my heart, you are mine. You are my joy, my wealth, my Ola." The boy looked at her in silence, torn between love for the woman who raised him and the burning questions about where he truly came from. That night, as he lay beside the glowing seashell, he whispered to himself, "Who am I really?" That night, Ola lay beside the glowing seashell, turning from side to side, unable to sleep. At last, his eyes grew heavy, and he drifted into a deep dream. He found himself in a world unlike any he had ever seen. The ground was not earth but shining coral, glowing softly in colors of blue and gold. Walls made of seashells curved high above him, their surfaces sparkling like gems. Strange fish swam through the halls as though the palace itself was alive. Ola's mouth fell open. He had never seen such beauty. Then, from the far end of the coral hall, a woman appeared. Her face was gentle, framed by long flowing hair, and her eyes glistened with both sadness and hope. From her waist down, she had the tail of a fish, gleaming silver under the light of the waters. At first she looked sorrowful, but the moment her eyes met his, her face brightened. She stretched her arms toward him, a smile breaking through her tears. "My son," she called softly, her voice echoing through the waters, "I have been waiting for you for so long." Ola froze, his feet rooted to the glowing coral floor. His heart pounded. He wanted to speak, but no words came out. "Come to me," the woman pleaded, her voice trembling with love. "You are mine. You belong to me." Confused and stranded in this strange dream, Ola could only stare at her, his lips parted, his chest rising and falling as if he were both afraid and drawn closer at the same time. And then, he woke up. The night air in his small hut felt heavy, the seashell by his side glowing brighter than ever before. Ola sat up, his body shaking, his heart filled with a truth he could no longer deny. He was not from the human world. In the morning, Ola told the poor woman about his dream, his voice trembling with wonder. "Mother, I saw a palace under the sea, and a woman who called me her son." The woman sighed deeply, holding his hand. The truth is calling you, Ola, she whispered. Far away in the palace beneath the waters, Queen Olufemi sat in her chambers, her mood as dark as the depths of the sea. Her eyes wandered to the pearl bed where little Ola had once laid before he was stolen. She had stared at it many nights, remembering the child she had lost. But suddenly, on this night, something strange happened. The tiny precious stones embedded in the bed began to glow brightly, shimmering with light. Olufemi gasped, pressing her hand against her chest. She knew what it meant. The glow was a sign, her son was alive. Her sorrow turned into joy. She rushed to the king, her voice filled with excitement. My lord, our son lives. The stones have spoken. We must find him. The palace stirred with renewed hope. Guards were summoned, and the search began again, this time fiercer, deeper, and wider. They scoured every corner of the mermaid kingdom, every hidden cave, and every shadowed reef. Yet no trace of Ola was found. But Queen Olufemi refused to rest. Her heart would not allow it. One day, she swam beyond the borders of the kingdom, determined to search the farthest reaches of the river. That very morning, in the human world, Ola and the poor woman prepared for their own journey. After many nights of dreams and whispers from the seashell, Ola knew he had to return to the place where he had been found. Mother, he said gently, take me to the river. I must see it with my own eyes. The poor woman, though afraid, agreed. Together they walked the dusty path toward the riverbank. Neither knew that destiny had already woven their path with the queen's. The sun was high when Ola and the poor woman reached the river. The waters shimmered under its light, calm yet alive, as though they had been waiting for him. Ola's heart pounded in his chest. He touched the stone where he had once been laid, though he did not remember it. The seashell beside him glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. The poor woman stood close, watching him with love and fear in her eyes. Child, are you certain? She whispered. Ola nodded slowly. This is where I belong. At that very moment, deep beneath the surface, Queen Olufemi swam upward, her tail flashing silver as she rose. She had searched tirelessly, and now something pulled her here, stronger than before. She broke through the water, her eyes scanning the riverbank, and then she froze. There he was. A boy, tall and bright-eyed, standing beside a poor woman. His face carried the features of the king, the same spark, the same strength. Olufemi's heart leapt. She knew him at once. My son, she cried, her voice trembling as she stretched out her hands from the water. Tears flowed freely, mixing with the river. Ola staggered back, his body shivering. It was the woman from his dreams, the one who had called him son. The same sorrow, the same smile. He could not breathe, his world spinning between the life he knew and the truth now before him. The poor woman's grip tightened on his shoulder, her heart sinking like a stone. She knew the moment had come, the day she feared, the day destiny would try to take him back. Ola's eyes filled with tears as he looked at the poor woman. She nodded slowly, her lips trembling, but her voice firm. My son, I have always known this day would come. You are not mine alone, you belong to the river. Ola turned back to the queen, his heart heavy but sure. The seashell at his feet glowed brighter than ever, shining like a doorway to the world he had seen in his dreams. Queen Olufemi stretched her arms toward him, her face wet with tears and joy. Come, my son. The palace awaits you. The poor woman bent down, kissed his forehead, and whispered, Go. The gods gave you to me for a time, but the river is your true home. Never forget me. Ola's chest shook as he clung to her one last time, then slowly stepped forward toward the water. The river rippled gently, as if welcoming back its prince, and with that, the seashell floated beside him, glowing like the moon itself. Queen Olufemi held out her hand, but before they vanished beneath the waves, she turned to the poor woman. You gave him life when I could not. For that, you shall never lack, the queen said softly. With a sweep of her hand, the river glimmered, and the woman felt strength flow into her body. From that day on, her home would never know hunger or thirst again. Ola's legs began to shimmer, and before the woman's eyes, they changed into a shining silver tail, powerful and graceful. He turned to her, his eyes wet with tears. Goodbye, mother, he whispered. I will never forget you. The poor woman raised her hand, forcing a smile even as her heart cracked. "Go, my son. Be great." And with that, Ola slipped into the water beside Queen Olufemi. Together they swam deeper and deeper, the seashell guiding their way back into the kingdom of coral walls and seashell towers. The woman stood at the riverbank for a long time, staring into the rippling water where he had disappeared. Her chest was heavy, her heart aching with both loss and pride. At last, she turned and walked slowly back to her humble home, the sound of the river following her like a memory. When Queen Olufemi swam back into the palace with Ola by her side, the kingdom shook with wonder. Word spread faster than the waves. The lost prince had returned. King Ora's eyes widened the moment he saw the boy. Ola carried his father's face, the same strong jaw, the same fire in his eyes. The king's heart, long hardened by sorrow, melted like wax. He stretched out his arms, his booming voice trembling for the first time in years. "My son, my blood, my heir has returned." He pulled Ola close, embracing him tightly. Tears glistened in his eyes, though he tried to hide them before the courtiers. For the first time in many seasons, laughter returned to the palace halls. A celebration was declared. Drums of seashells echoed through the water, coral flutes sang, and schools of bright fish swirled around in dazzling displays. The kingdom rejoiced, for their prince had come home at last. But in the shadows of the palace, whispers began to rise. Servants who had seen too much and heard too much carried the secret like fire on dry grass. Soon, it reached the ears of the king himself. The truth spread. Queen Afea had made a plan with her servant to steal the baby. She had been the reason the prince vanished all those years ago. The palace gasped. Some said she was wicked, others said she was only desperate. But there was no silence anymore. Her secret had leaked like water from a broken shell. When the king heard the truth, his heart burned with anger and disappointment. Queen Afea, the gentle woman who once filled the palace with smiles, had allowed desperation to push her into darkness. For plotting against the heir, she was dethroned before the court and sent out of the palace with her faithful servant, never to return. But the king also saw the fault of Queen Olufemi. Though she had given him a son, her pride and cruel mocking of Afea had poisoned the palace for years, and so, she too was disciplined, warned never again to let arrogance cloud her heart. With judgment passed, peace returned to the kingdom. The drums that once beat for sorrow now sang of joy. Ola, the prince, was cherished by his father and prepared for the throne. Far away on land, the poor woman who had raised Ola did not remain forgotten. For her sacrifice and love, she was richly blessed by the mermaids. Her hut became a house, her hunger turned to plenty, and her tears into laughter. And so, both the mermaids in their coral palaces and the woman on the riverbank lived happily, bound forever by the story of the child who belonged to both worlds. The end.
Stay tuned. Thank you for watching. We love and appreciate all our viewers. More stories coming to you from African Tales by Mira.